Welcome to the Transform Sales Podcast, where forward-thinking business leaders come to share their experiences and ideas, learn from each other, and amplify their results together.
Hey guys, we are in another session of the Transform Sales Podcast, Sales Software Review. I'm Dave Mandura, and today we have a special guest. We have Mark, CEO of Upsell. How you doing today?
Hey Dave, thanks for having me, man.
Appreciate your time. Today we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic, which is optimizing sales workflow efficiency for sales development representatives. But before we get started, I would like to know a little bit more about the company. How did it started? Was there any specific need that you had and you wanted to solve it in-house, and then you realized, this is something that not only I need, but a lot of SDRs, a lot of account executives also need. And, we got to push it to the market and see if there's actually a lot of value that we can give.
Yeah, so our story is probably a little bit different than that synopsis. We started in the data industry, myself and my co-founder. We've got about a decade experience working with some of the biggest names in sales intelligence and B2B data. We were very early on contributors at these companies and have helped build them over the years. And my co-founder is CTO, and he's built a lot of the data assets and databases. And I as CEO here at Upsell and have spearheaded a lot of the GTM efforts and sales endeavors at these competitive organizations. We were really disappointed where the direction of the data industry was going, Dave. And we said, we can do better than this. And we decided to go out on a limb and build Upsell. We're specifically focused on providing what we feel is the most valuable aspects of a B2B contact data provider, the data itself. I know it sounds kind of ridiculous, but it is down to the actual contact info specifically, where a lot of these organizations have stemmed off and bridged off into a lot of different directions, but we're taking it right back to the roots with providing highly accurate mobile phone numbers and contact info for the reps to be able to leverage.
No, absolutely. And one of the things that me as an account executive, I also experienced in the past 5 years is, like you mentioned, right, the inaccuracy of the mobile numbers, right? I know cold calling sucks for a lot of people, but that's the reason why it works. So in this case, it'll be great to kind of cover, what were the alternatives that your customers were using before buying your software? Any specific thing that kind of pops?
Yeah, I mean, we compete with all the big name data providers out there. So, everyone from ZoomInfo to Seamless, Apollo, Cognism, LeadIQ. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. I think we were talking about before the show, right? I mean, there's so many different data providers out there. So we certainly compete with them. Our motion is probably a little bit unique, where we've been blessed enough to be able to support 1,000 different customers over the course of our careers. And we've been able to see a lot of the most sophisticated revenue organizations out there and see exactly how they're leveraging data providers. And our motion actually takes into consideration the fact that we're probably not the only data provider that you're using. And that's actually best in class. It's best in class to have what we consider and what we call a multi-data vendor solution, rather than a mono data solution, which the notion has been over, some of these companies will try to make you believe that, they're going to solve all the data problems by themselves. And if you've been in the data space, or if you've been a user of the data for any point in time, like yourself, Dave, then that, certain data providers excel at certain things, and not one data provider is going to be able to deliver all the holistic needs that a mature organization is going to need over time. So we focus specifically on contact data, and even more specific than that, high degree of accuracy of mobile phone numbers in particular. That's really where we're hanging our hat and our claim to fame from a data perspective.
No, one of the things that I've seen in the market, for example, and I feel like at a certain point we experienced it, right? We had a provider just for emails. We had a provider just for calls. And now we're coming in with like this hot thing, which is Clay, right? That has all these providers in one, right? So we're getting a little closer to that, but I get the pain, right? Having so many different data providers to try to get the message across, right? And one of the other things that I took away from this is, like, one thing is knowing your clients, right? But one thing is, what are you doing with the data, right? So if both of them are not taken care of, it's going to cost you a lot, right? It's going to cost you a lot because once you get the data that's validated and ready to message, you don't know the buyer, right? So you got to make sure you take care of the fundamentals, right? Knowing your buyer, knowing what to do with the data, and what data to actually use when it comes to prospecting, right?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So when it comes to the challenges, what were challenges that your customers are running into with those alternatives that your software helped them overcome?
Yeah, there's several different challenges that our customers face. First and foremost, broken workflows. And this will happen by essentially having one of two different models. And can I share my screen now, Dave? Can I show a specific model?
Absolutely.
That'd be great. These are actually, just to educate some of the buyers that might be looking. Like, there's predominantly two models that have been adopted across the GTM landscape here for the past 10 years. And there's what we call a supplemental motion. And then there's a regionalized motion or approach toward data providers. And a supplemental motion is essentially having multiple data providers for every single sales rep that you have. There's a lot of challenges with respect to this motion. As you can imagine, it's quite costly. You go in there and you start paying access fees, and then you pay license fees across every single sales rep and across every different provider. It's pretty taxing. It's also broken from a workflow perspective. Very rarely do the reps ever even leverage the supplemental providers. They export the primary provider, whichever they deem to be primary, export it into CRM, drop it into engagement. Only, the idea is then what? In engagement layer, they call that phone number and it's wrong. Are they really going all the way out to LinkedIn to look at the supplemental providers? That's not really how it's happening. No AE or SDR is doing that, right? So the only time you're leveraging a supplemental provider in this motion is if the primary provider did not have a fill rate of a phone number and email address, that critical information that we need to be able to actually get in contact with those folks, which is a very slim amount of time, right? It's very, very slim. And obviously it's taxing from an operational perspective and things like that to manage this. You've also got, a regionalized approach with its own challenges. This is a mono data strategy, right? The North American rep, calls up a record or can't get in contact with a record. Let's say the phone number is not even there with the primary provider. If they had an additional data provider, maybe in this case, the EMEA data provider had coverage for North America. Well, they don't have access to it, so they're kind of up a creek, right? They don't have another option. So also not a great option. This one sacrifices data coverage in lieu of cost effectiveness. Again, you're paying access fees, but certainly diminished in terms of investment here across the board by just limiting the amount of multiple licenses across every rep. So both of these motions have been widely adopted across the GTM landscape. And both are wrought with lots of issues, obviously high costs and lack of coverage being the two primary ones. We come in and we actually standardize that. So we are that exporting solution, those streamlined workflows to be able to export records directly into CRM, at which case, very similar to you talked about Clay, like that's a great analogy. I like that Clay has really brought to the forefront enrichment and even waterfall enrichment and some of these concepts that we've been talking about for years in the data industry. But for an individual rep, they're not going to hop into Clay. Typically, it's really more for the RevOps marketing guys. And we're really built to enable a rep with multiple data providers and multiple data coverage. Wouldn't it be great to have 3 phone numbers of 3 different data providers on every single record, irrespective of region, irrespective of what team you're on, all exported seamlessly through one extension that you become accustomed to and it'll never change going on. So.
Yeah, no, and one of the things that I want to highlight here is obviously when you have multiple platforms, right, you have to be knowledgeable enough to understand what's breaking, and once it's breaking, who do you bring it up to, right? So it's a mess. It becomes a mess. It's time consuming. You don't know which provider is actually going to help you. So you're just A/B testing instead of actually being in conversations that drive business, right? So I think you're solving for something huge, and I think most of us are actually dealing with this, right?
Yeah, it's very tactical. I mean, I came from running the sales teams at these companies, and we don't build frills is our motto internally. We don't build nice to haves. We don't build cool things just to have cool things. That tech bloat and that distraction is really costly to an organization. To your point, we typically, when customers adopt us, just from a workflow perspective, just exporting contacts that they would typically take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 clicks to get that record in. We are literally a one-click export solution to grab a record right on LinkedIn Sales Nav or LinkedIn where we're prospecting, drop it straight into CRM, enrich it with multitude of data providers to ensure that you've got robust coverage on that record. And yeah, we see about 25 to 50% workflow efficiencies gained from that. So, what you're able to do in a day, you can get done 25% faster or even half the day quicker through leveraging upsell.
Awesome. No, and just imagine the fact that you have a lot of people in your team. Think about how much time you're reducing, right? Because if you have a team of 10, 20 people and everybody's having the same issue, how much is it costing you per every license? How much is it costing you per every candidate spending so much time doing admin work, right?
Exactly. Admin work and time spent off the phone, right? We want to limit that as much as humanly possible. So make it as fast as easy to get those prospects into CRM, into the engagement workflow where they are so you can action them. That's absolutely the goal at the end of the day. And then being able to connect with them, which we'll talk about here in a second, with respect to some of the key KPIs and stuff. I think, call to connect rate is certainly a big one for us.
Cool. So let's get to our favorite part of the Transform Sales Podcast, Sales Software Review, is actually you demoing the product and kind of showing us the key features that have helped overcome these specific challenges, right?
Yeah. We are, like I said, a Chrome extension. We have no intention of building a web application. We don't really feel that reps spend time in the web apps. It's mostly RevOps and marketing folks, and we're really hell-bent on supporting the individual contributor. Being able to export records directly into CRM and then into an engagement solution is the core motion that SDRs and AEs do every single day. We've broken it down. I said, we sped it up quite a bit, right? I said, we were able to do it very quickly. So, for instance, if I was looking to get Jan here into CRM, you can't actually see it because of the banner, but there's an export complete here. If I go over into Salesforce and refresh, that record has already been instantly exported.
Okay.
You didn't even see me export the record. I'll do it again with Jocelyn real quick just to show. So I click on this button and you'll see export complete.
Yep. Yeah, I see it.
It's happening so seamlessly.
That was so quick.
That you don't even know. And obviously mobile phones are really our claim to fame, who the individual is and all that. What I'm doing is I'm actually triggering a hotkey. So kind of what Superhuman is to email, we've done for sales intelligence. I'm pressing a standard export, Alt-D, for a hotkey. And what that does is it triggers it based on an individual profile or clicking a checkbox here. I'll show you one kind of what you were alluding to a little bit earlier around some of the difficulties with being an AE or an SDR. You're prospecting a lot of people. Let's say Jezreel here is a really good contact to prospect in. I don't think I exported him yet. And let's say I'm researching him, yeah? And what do? We do a lot of researching for prospecting. We find relevance, we find context for the individual, what I actually like about this person, what I like about the company. You were talking about some of the triggers and signals, and we'll get into that in a bit too. Ring Central, right? What if I supported 8x8, for instance, right? Those guys compete with Ring Central, and maybe 8x8's a customer of mine. Well, I want to remember that when I'm actually calling him. Yeah. I want to actually bring that up on the call. And a lot of that time that engagement layer and that prospecting layer are separate. It's maybe after lunch, right? After we've had lunch and we're a little tired and we forgot about this guy in totality.
Yeah.
So what we actually do is this is part of the hotkeys functionality that I just showed you. You see, I hit Alt-C and this little context bubble popped up. And I can say, well, Ring Central competes with 8x8, our customer. Let's say that that's the scenario, and I'll bold it there just for that. I hit enter on that. And now what happens is I exported that record over, but I've captured that specific piece of context.
Wow.
So now, and we didn't go over this, but I've actually pushed every one of those records in.
And Mark, honestly, this is the first time I've ever seen anybody use hotkeys for this. I know this is probably something that a lot of people have mentioned too, but I never saw it like that ever.
I think we're alone in it. So here's Jezreel, the one we just exported, as well as the other two. But you can see I pulled context straight through.
Yeah.
So when I'm making that call, I know exactly what I'm going to be talking about, right?
100%. No, and one of the things that of course. And then one of the things that I saw, I think it was from Samantha McKenna, is that only 8% of SDRs and account executives are personalizing their messages.
That's crazy, isn't it?
There's no excuse. There's no excuse now.
It's on every record. A lot of the time it's because of that difficulty. It's because, I look at all these records and I say, wow, I want all these people in CRM, and I export them in and they get meshed up with every other record that gets pushed in there. And you lose track. It's an organizational nightmare. Let's say I like Greg and I want to export him out. I'm going to show you a really complicated one. This one is actually been popular among our AE customers in particular. We've got a lot of AEs that are paired with SDRs, and they, Outreach and Sales Loft and some of the engagement solutions are not really built specifically for those guys. They've got half an hour demo call, a free block of half an hour, and then another demo call. And it's like, how do you make use of that half an hour when the engagement solutions just jam you into doing all the tasks and all the activity at once? And in this scenario, I'll show you the actual hotkey that's configured. I'm going to actually, as an AE, let's say Justin is my SDR in this scenario. I'm going to export the record into his top of funnel, put the record into his name, tag it, add context to it, and drop it into a decision maker cadence for him to follow up on.
Nice.
So I'm truly fueling his top of funnel in this scenario, right? I can have him spend more time on the phones, but I can also give him that context and that relevance as to why I'm actually asking for that meeting. Yeah. So you'll see Alt S in this scenario. Let's say Greg is, I'll show you a little faster. How about this? Let's select these guys. I don't know. I'll make it not all of them, but let's select a few here. Yeah. I hit Alt S, and let's say maybe they're all Insight Partners portcos or something like that, right? And Insight Partners is an investor or something.
Let's say unify the know with the people you select.
That's right. So it gets crazy, right? So I'm selecting a whole bunch of records here, maybe 20 or something like that. And I don't know, how many seconds was that? 3? Something like that?
Last 2. I'll say 2 seconds.
Okay, well, every single record right there in CRM.
Oh, wow. So I'm imagining a situation, right? I'm getting a list of companies that are looking to hire. Now I can grab them and say, they're looking to hire sales roles. And it's in my list in seconds.
You're ready to go, right? Look, I've tagged every single one of them as Insight Partners Portco context, assigned them to Justin as my SDR, simultaneously dropped all of those records into Sales Loft. It happens that quick. There's no lag with our solution. We've built around that. We eliminated the lag, dropped them specifically into the decision maker cadence, tagged it as marked to Justin, so he knows it's coming from me, not coming from him. And if I click on any of these individuals, you'll see the context was pulled through, but you'll see that I actually assigned it to Justin specifically to follow up on. So the tasks are in his name for the follow-up. Pretty cool.
Wow. Insane. And
so that's
I'm seeing a lot of things I haven't seen before.
It's pretty neat, right?
So
when you talk about the different solutions that we have, that's, to kind of conceptualize it for the viewer, we've really talked about Prospector and Enrich. We've talked about getting the record from LinkedIn, finding that actual business persona, and kicking it into CRM and enriching it with mobile phones and email addresses and things like that. And those are the 2 solutions that we've covered thus far.
Got it. I have a question that is super requested from the audience. When it comes to customer support channels, what tends to be your most successful or quickest for you to communicate with potential buyers or existing buyers?
Yeah, we're a big Slack shop. So like every single customer and actually as many prospects as are willing to Slack connect with us, we just feel that it's the most instantaneous and we can solve things in a split second. So we've implemented Slack pretty holistically across our customer base.
Got it. Yeah, we did as well. I feel like that was the quickest way for us to get feedback, for us to kind of send a link for testimonials. And that's that's part of the campaign as well. But when it comes to tasks, deliverables, and or people involved in setting up the software for this use case, how long does it typically take to reach full productivity?
Yeah, I mean, luckily in the data space, and luckily even more so with Upsell, we're a very lightweight application. It's very robust in terms of functionality and things you can do, as you can see. But it is a Chrome extension, and the beauty of Chrome extensions are they can be downloaded and set up in about 30 minutes. So, we need to do a little field mapping. There's some best practice there that we would always work with our customers on. Luckily, you have two data industry veterans at your disposal, both co-founders of Upsell that have done this more than a handful of times, let's put it that way. So we've been able to really implement and help a lot of our customers implement some data best practices as well. A lot of them are not set up correctly. And especially when you start talking about a multi-data vendor solution, that's when it becomes complicated. So there's really no setup that we can't handle, and nothing we haven't encountered with working with over 1,000 customers over a decade of being in the space. So, setup wise, pretty quick on that end. Who needs to be involved specifically? I always like to do two meetings. I like to have one with the RevOps team to actually do the field mapping, integrations, and all that, and then I like to do another call with the actual sales development leader, or AE leader, or whoever it happens to be, salesperson, to actually talk through the hotkeys and the workflows and how do we want that to actually flow for the organization. It can differ for a lot of folks. We have people leveraging different hotkeys to do a lot of different things. One of the big blockers that some companies we found run into is there's a lot of leads in the system, and they want to import in as contacts, which is, best practice in Salesforce. You would expect that. But as they go to export with a lot of our competitors' solutions, they get blocked. It's like the Salesforce lead deduper blocks them. And we've built functionality with hotkeys where we can actually take that lead record, convert it to a contact, update that record and match to it with Upsell data, and then merge those records. So we can take that lead record and merge it over and dedupe it all through our export capability. So there's no hangups. Again, like really tactical for the reps, right? But the pain points that we experience as individual contributors day in and day out, right? So we're looking to solve those things. Those are the things that we really turn our attention to.
Thanks for sharing, Mark. And one of the things that I like is the first thing that I sensed when I started talking to you is the willingness to help and the willingness to inform and educate your buyer, right? You're not just trying to sell me something, but it's more like I want to make sure you understand it so that you can make the best use of it. And the second one, you answered the question for me. I wanted to ask you regarding the duplicates, but you kind of sensed the question coming.
Yeah, well, we think we have the most robust contact matcher algorithm on the back end than any data provider out there. So we're going to match, to many, many unique IDs and many fuzzy magic logic in the CRM specifically prior to matching. And then if we can't match it, then we'll create the record. So, we account for all that stuff.
That's a strong statement. And no, in the past 5 years that I've been working in this industry, most of the people that I work with, they had tons of issues with the duplicates, right? Then they'll have multiple SDRs calling. Next, they're calling the same person, and then this person doesn't want to have a conversation with us anymore, right? But the fact that you can enrich it on the go, have a key that can allow those automations to happen, I think is very strong for any go-to-market team, right?
Dupes are a big issue. And it all stems actually from a lot of these solutions. You can think all the way back to CRM and marketing automation systems, and sales engagement has followed suit where, and a lot of the data providers, even the biggest name data providers out there today, base their entirety of their databases and these CRMs and MATs and SEPs all around an email address. And as a data guy, that is a unique ID, meaning there's only one of them, typically. But it's horrible. It's a horrible unique ID. It's actually not unique when you start thinking about the individual, right? To your point, we had a customer that came to us that had a lead come inbound. They reached out to it. The SDRs reached out to the lead. There's this woman at some software company, and they didn't know the software company, and they reached out to her and they started demoing her. And she said, "Stop." She said, "You don't know who I am." And the AE and the SDR on the call were like, what do you mean? What do you mean? And she goes, "Guys, go in your CRM and search for my name." And this was the sales leader telling me this story, but it really made them feel like big time buffoons, because those AEs and SDRs started demoing a 4-time consecutive buyer of the solution, which they were treating like a new conversation. This person had purchased and pulled their solution in 4 times previously. And that goes back to it's the fact is that record will be created and made around a new email address because she's moved to a new company. That's not a single pane of glass. That's not an actual full story representation. We've built all of ours off of a proprietary unique ID where I will only ever have one of you in our database, Dave. And it solves for that. We will never have that duplication issue where all the data providers are really struggling from that as well. So email is not a great unique ID. It's bad.
Where were you the whole time?
We've been at those companies, man. That's all right.
So one of the things that I wanted to ask to kind of wrap this up is, what are the KPIs should your ideal customer use to evaluate the success with your software for this use case, and what quantifiable outcomes can they expect?
Yeah, it's a great question. We really think about 3 core KPIs, I would say. So I'll actually share my screen real quick because it'll be easier just to walk for the visual learners. So this is a case study from Legit Security, and they look at it very similarly, but call to connect rate is probably the biggest KPI that we get objectively measured to. They're using a leading data provider, switched to our data, and saw a 4.7x increase in call to connect rate. So a massive shift there. I think actually Madison summarizes it down here. Call to connect rate increased from 1.8% to 8.4%. So this is with a very brand name data provider out there in the space. A lot of these data providers, they're like a 6 out of 10 on a lot of things, right? They don't really specialize, and we're really specialized to mobile phones and to contact data specifically. So saw a really, really big increase in call to connect rate. That's absolutely one of the major KPIs. The other is cost savings and tech savings. In this case, 35% from Legit Security. That would be typical if you're looking to bolster data coverage. In this case, Clarify actually saw a 61% cost reduction, was using 2 data providers and reduced that. We have that model where we move the licensing to enrichment. Well, enrichment is much more cost effective for most organizations. And just using a very streamlined application to get the data, like I showed you, into CRM and then having it enriched, that's by far the most cost effective motion to do. And then lastly is speed of prospecting. We talked about this a little earlier. Customers are typically seeing 25 to 50% faster prospecting. A little tougher to quantify that one, no doubt. But with the speed of exporting, like I showed you there, and obviously when you don't have to work through multiple extensions and multiple different applications, it adds up. And although a guesstimate, a pretty educated one.
Yeah, but I have a question. So, for example, let's say there's an issue. Do you guys have like a backlog of errors? Because I'm thinking the way you guys operate, you don't have a backlog, right? Everything works. That's the sense that it gives me, right?
We definitely we spend a lot of time up front making sure that we review with RevOps team specifically to ensure that you can think about it, right? Think about it even for the easiest scenario. You go to export a record in and it says, "Hey, Dave, are you trying to match Mark Bedard with this Mark Bedard? It's like, do we really want to be bogging down our AEs and SDRs with that kind of menial task? Like, it either reaches certain criteria and it does match. So did it match on email? Did it match on LinkedIn URL? Did it match on mobile phone? Did it match on fuzzy match on person, location, all this kind of stuff? Or it didn't. And if it didn't, then make the new record. But we shouldn't have AEs and SDRs making that determination. And realistically, we certainly shouldn't be bogging them down. The last thing they need is to oh, well, now I got to do a data cleanup project. I'm trying to prospect. Like, what is this person? No, this is a completely different Mark Bedard in Arkansas, right? Like, he's not the same guy. So that's just ridiculous, you know? And yeah, we try to front load that stuff where we have a pretty robust checklist that we walk through with RevOps. Again, it doesn't take more than half an hour, but it's decisions that RevOps needs to make organizationally that they typically have made organizationally. It's just hard to operationalize and institute those changes with current tech stacks that they have. So you're exactly right. Things typically just flow from the get-go very fast.
No, I agree. No, thank you for sharing this, Mark. And I feel like you touch very strong pains that I experienced as an AE, and I wish your product was there in those moments. I was struggling to kind of get my pipeline filled, trying to get some relevance in those conversations, trying to be able to use those tools at its max potential, right? And you're just making it easy in seconds.
That's the bit for sure, Dave. You get it. And yeah, anyone who's ever held a bag and felt the pain, for sure. You look at that and you're like, oh, that would be good. You know, that would be a lot easier. So for sure.
Yeah. And the fact that you explained those pain points in such an easy way as well, right? Because you're hearing so much people talk about this, you see that it's a big pain that is in the market right now. And the fact that you guys are solving for it, obviously kudos to you guys for being the guys there, always educating buyers, always going further than just normal enrichment, trying to do the least amount of work just to get the sell, right? You guys are.
There's really no reason why even a smaller organization can't have a best-in-class data strategy right now. And
100%.
We would love to evangelize that and help companies get there for sure.
No, you definitely are doing it, Mark. I appreciate that. Anything you want to mention before we wrap up?
Firstly, I just want to say thank you. You know, thanks for having us on the show. You know, I appreciate it very much. And any opportunity we get to talk about our baby is great. We love that. But yeah, we're built really for cutting edge sales 2.0 organizations, you know, folks that are really thinking about looking at modern GTM as a different animal than what it was for the past 10, 15 years. And if I would encourage anyone who's interested in any way, shape, or form to just reach out. You know, we're low key gents and more than happy to talk through it with you. And to your point, Dave, I mean, you know this about me. It's you know, if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. And I'll tell you point blank, it is what it is. You know, we're not about forcing square pegs and round holes. So, you know, more than happy to just chat and see if we can help.
Absolutely. No, and I could tell you're very passionate. You could tell just by the space you're in. You could tell by the detail on your website, which was one of the first things that caught my attention when I saw it. It's like, I didn't feel like I had to navigate through so much things just to get the idea, right? Straight to the point. It's clear. If I'm a buyer, I'll walk in the process with a lot less questions, right? And I feel like you guys nailed it in that sense.
I'll tell my chief creative director that for sure. I'll give him the feedback. Thank you.
No, but I know it was influenced by you as far as I can tell. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you for this session of the Transform Sales Podcast, Sales Software Review. For those that are interested in optimizing your sales workflow efficiency, whether you're an SDR or an account executive, this is the place to go. And it's a good product for you to influence to upper management to, you know, make the decision, stop burning money.
That's it. Yeah, we can help for sure. Stop, just cut the costs. You know, there's no reason to do it. You keep the same exact data for half the cost.
Exactly. You have a great team behind Mark that is willing to support you, educate you on the product, and set you up correctly within weeks.
Absolutely.
Awesome, Mark. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dave.